Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and it's a tournament recap review video for you today, and I'm going to be talking the Scottish Takeover 4. Okay, before we get started on this video, just want to, as always, thank all my Patreon supporters. You guys are incredible. You are what really keep me going. So thank you very much for all your support, both in the chat. You know, it's just incredible. And if you want to become an Aceface patron, it's really simple. All you need to do is search me over on the Patreon, and you can go on from there. And just for $1 a month, you can join the Discord server, where we can we chat and share work in progress pictures and advice on different lists and different units. Just quite a little fun place to be. At the moment, it's just kind of small, really kind of cool group of people. I'm looking forward to getting some more people involved in it. But really cool place to be. I also do dice, which I only make available either at tournaments. If you've played me, you'll know that I like to give the players I play a dice, but also through my Patreon. So if you want some Aceface dice, that's pretty much the only place to get hold of them. And of course we do t-shirts as well, custom t-shirts, and a vast array of other little cool goodies that I want to give out to my Patreon supporters. So if you want to be involved in it, excuse me, jump over and become a Patreon supporter. But just by watching this video and putting that big thumbs up and putting a comment down below, you're already helping me loads. So thank you very much for tuning in today. So let's get underway for this tournament recap video. Okay, so let me start off by telling you a little bit about the event. So it is an ITC Champions Missions event. It's a 2-day tournament, 5 games, 2,000 points. And yes, straight out of the ITC Champions Missions. It's been going, funny enough, this is the 4th event, but they also do doubles as well. It's run by Will and Vic, who are really dedicated to make the tournament the best they possibly can. It is set in Scotland, funny enough, and it's about an hour from Aberdeen. Roughly give you a rough idea of kind of where it is geography wise. So right at the top of Scotland, well, kind of up top. My geography is not amazing, but it's a really picturesque, lovely place to play 40k. I've been before, thoroughly enjoyed it. Great bunch of people. It's a really nice atmosphere. So it's quite chilled out. It's quite laid back. It's a nice place as well, so there's lots of room to move around. They lay on free drinks, which is amazing. So whether it be alcoholic beverages or whether it just be soft drinks, you've kind of got them in abundance all through the day, which is really cool. They also lay on lunch on both the Saturday and Sunday. It was kind of a real nice kind of broth, like a big kind of hearty soup this time, which was amazing. Also sandwiches and sausage rolls and all sorts of stuff, so really good food as well. And it's a lovely place to play 40k. So like, after being before, definitely wanted to come up again and have another opportunity to play in the event, see a lot of friends and catch up with people as well, which is always amazing and the best thing about the hobby. So great event, and I would highly recommend that you do check it out in the future. It is potentially a little bit of a trek. I fly up there, but actually, as far as it goes, it's not incredibly expensive to fly up there. It's fairly reasonable, and I'm sure it'd be easy enough to stay at different places that are situated not too far away. And it is a lovely place to visit. It's real loads of fresh air, really beautiful countryside. Just a nice place to kind of visit if you've not been before. So I would heavily recommend it. And there will be lots of opportunities going forward for you to visit and play in such a cool event. So that's kind of where it is and what it's all about. When I went before, I came second, so it was a good first outing, and kind of I was looking forward to seeing whether I could maybe go one better, or at least have a really good performance. That was kind of the plan going into the tournament. I knew that there would be some good players there. And I wanted to make sure I brought something that was sturdy, that had some teeth, and that could definitely, that could compete in the event. So next up, let's talk through the list. Okay, so what did I take? So this year and this season, I'm predominantly focusing on Thousand Suns as my primary faction. That might change. I haven't really got enough points on the board probably to push for best in faction. But with the LVO as an event I'm going to, and the amount of points that is going to give, it might not be completely off the cards. So it's kind of there in the background, but depending on what happens with the meta and with chapter approved and with GC Occult Codex on the horizon, who knows, I might change my mind last minute and go with something else for the LVO. But at the moment I'm kind of planning for a primary faction of Thousand Suns. So what I took was I took a battalion of Thousand Suns, and in that battalion I had 2 Demon Princes. One I gave the Helm of the Third Eye for the regenerating command points, and then in my second Demon Prince I paid a CP to give him the Dark Matter Crystal, which is incredible in this list, and I'll talk about that as we go through it. And then my third HQ, which is my Warlord, is Araman. Now in this tournament you could change your Warlord each game, but I decided Araman is the man, and he stayed the man all tournament. I think he's just a quality, and I think when he gets that free up in Von, he actually can be really, really tanky, and he very much proved that in this event. Then into troops, I have 2 units of 10 cultists, just real bare bones. I take them with the close combat weapons just because I think they can get a bit more bang for their bucks. When you've just got just a small little unit, I find the auto gun's a bit useless generally. So it's quite nice because actually 10 dudes when they charge in can do a little bit of damage, so not too bad. And then in my final troops choice, I had 26 Zangors. So I had 25 and then the Brayhorn. Also had the the Twist Spray, and then I had the Brayhorn for the shorter charge. So pretty solid unit are the Zangors. They definitely give you the opportunity to do a lot of work. They can clean out screams pretty effectively, but also with the Dark Matter Crystal can jump around the board and be a bit of a nuisance. So first time really using them, but I wanted to put them in there. Then in Elite, in Fast Attack, I had a unit of Enlightened. So I had 7 Enlightened in all with the Great Bows. Really good unit. Again, great when they're buffed up. Nice and quick and manoeuvrable. They add a little bit of shooting punch to this list, which I really like. And with 2 wounds and a 5 up in Von, they're not that easy to get rid of. You have to put a little bit of firepower in them for them to disappear, and particularly if you buff them up, they can actually do quite a good job. So I've got them, really like them. Just love the models, and I thought they were a cool unit to bring, so I brought them. Then I have in Elite I have the Shaman on disc. He's great for both the Enlightened but also for the Zangors. Most of the time I found him doing the work with the Enlightened because the Zangors were quite often just springing off with the Dark Matter Crystal, and he was kind of not able to kind of catch up because I was having to put them in far corners and what have you. So generally he hung out with the Enlightened, but it gave me the options of both, which I liked. And another Smite, so the list is very heavy on Smite, which obviously is very effective at the moment. I then had a Supreme Command detachment, no, a Auxiliary Super Heavy, sorry, which was Mortarion. Now this one hurt me a little bit because I really wanted to take Magnus, but the way that I wanted the list to kind of operate, it was more beneficial having Mortarion. Mortarion's a little bit more hardy and a little bit more sturdy on his own. He doesn't necessarily need as much buffs because he can just buff himself for a -1, and with a Disgusting Resilience he's actually pretty solid. Takes a lot of firepower to get rid of him. You will kill him in a turn easily if you put your whole army into him, but sometimes he can sneak through, and if he gets first turn or he gets the jump on you, he's more than capable of pretty much soloing an army. So he's such a cool unit, such fun, and has that kind of real aggressive ability to both annihilate something big but also clear tons of bodies. So in this particular list I thought he fitted better in with what I wanted to do. I like Magnus a lot, and at times I missed Magnus, but other times Mortarion was just incredible, so he definitely, but that's why I put him in. I would have liked to have taken him out and put Magnus in there because it would have themed my army better, but I thought Mortarion was the better bet, so I went for him. Then into my last attachment I had a a super heavy auxiliary detachment again, so a second one. This time I went for a unit, well not a unit, but you take them in threes, so 3 of the Chaos Renegade Helverins. So these are the little knights with the autocannons, the super autocannons that do a flat 3 damage, -1, strength 7, silly range, very quick, 12 wounds. They're a great unit and really, really cheap, really, for what they do. And I took 3 of them. So in one in one chunk, you can just, in one unit if you like, you can take 3, and then they just separate when they hit the board, which means it cuts down on drops. So it's just a really cool way of doing it. You don't generate CPs from taking a super heavy detachment as such, because they're all little knights, so I wouldn't have got more for that, so I might as well go for just for the auxiliary. It doesn't really hurt me that much, so went for that. These were a new unit for me. I don't normally like using knights, and I would carry on with that. These didn't really kind of factor like knights. They were much more just like gun platforms, much more like a Predator or a Dreadnought. That was kind of their function. They weren't necessarily moving around the board that much, apart from when I really needed them to jump on objectives or stride forward to try and get recon or whatever it might be. They were still quite useful for that, but on the whole they were sitting in the corner because they had such great range, and they were just putting threatening shots into things. And you know, we'll talk about how the list how it went, and you know what I would like to change in the future potentially, and what worked, what didn't work. But that was the idea and the plan for them. So that's the list. There were lots of other really powerful lists there, but I was feeling quite positive. I thought I had a good chance of doing well in the tournament. So we had the draw. The draw was up early, and my first draw came out. So let's find out what I drew. Okay, so round 1, and my round 1 opponent was a gentleman called Ben Morrison, and really lovely guy. He was, you know, quite honest. Is that, you know, he normally ends up in the bottom tables, so you know, he was trying to kind of push it and see if he could do a little bit better this time out. But a really lovely guy. We had a really fantastic game, very chilled out, nice start to the tournament, which was cool. And he had knights, so hopefully you'll see the kind of pictures, because I've kind of taken some pictures and I've taken some film as well, so hopefully you'll kind of see that while we're kind of talking. But yeah, so he had knights. He had the Castellan, he had a Crusader, and he had, I'm going to say they're errants. They might be errants, might be wardens. I think they're wardens actually, potentially. So yeah, so Castellan, everyone knows what Castellan is. Basically just 1,000,000 guns, really scary, lots of high damage stuff, able to nuke big things really well. He had the Crusader, which was great. He had the Icarus autocannon kind of top pieces on his. They were really good against my guys, because I had a lot of fly, so they were able to real kind of put quite a lot of hurt in. So he had them. He had the battle cannon, and he had the Gatling cannon on the Crusader. Then on the other 2 he had battle cannons on both, and then the Reaper chainsaw, as well as one of them had the iron cannon thing on top. And he went for House Raven, which is an amazing choice, because Raven are incredibly powerful, particularly on that Castellan. Because he didn't have a lot of other CP, I knew kind of going into this game that if I could try and get him to drain that CP really quickly, that would definitely take the heat off a little bit. But I think he'd planned it quite well, because he was very cautious with his CPs. He had kind of almost like, I'm not going to spend him on anything else apart from this, and that's that. And I really couldn't bait him, so kind of well played there for him. So we set up. It was long ways deployment, so it was, I think it was literally hammer and anvil, I believe. No, it might not have been. No, it wasn't. It was the kind of the circle in the middle with the 4 quarters, which actually really suited the board, because it had the board itself had like a big circle in the middle, which was the perfect diameter. So we kind of knew exactly where to deploy, which was awesome in itself, because it kind of gave us that kind of zone. So we deployed. I was nervous. There was quite a bit of terrain able for me to hide some of my troops. I didn't want to get shot off the ball really quickly, so I was able to hide my Enlightened, hide my Zangors, and the cultists. So pretty much what was out in the open was the Helverins, because there was nothing I could do about that. The Helverins were quite big and they were above the terrain, and Mortarion, of course. Now you always have that choice with Mortarion. Do you just kind of go balls to the wall, bring him as far forward, and then try and make him do some work? I decided that was the best way to do. I couldn't hide him. I measured out his guns. I could probably stay out of range of the Gatling cannon, but I really couldn't stay out of the range of anything else. So I kind of thought, look, it is what it is. I expect Mortarion to go down, particularly if I don't get first turn, but I'm going to stick him out there and see whether I can kind of I can get into the action. So he rolled off. Of course he got the +1. He did get first turn. I did not seize. And he then wiped Mortarion off the face of the board. He used the Raven strategy, of course, which then allowed him to basically re-roll his ones for everything, and he absolutely nuked Mortarion. It took him 3 of his 4 knights to do it, but you know, that was plenty, you know. So he got rid of him. That was pretty much his first turn. He didn't do anything else. He did come forward a little bit into the middle of the board, just trying to, you know, take some objectives. So ITC, you still always want to be holding something. So he was moving on to the objectives. Everything basically apart from the Castellan, which stood in the corner, which it always does. That's the Castellan's thing. It stood there, and it was over to me. So obviously I'd lost a quarter of my points in one fell swoop. So I was up against it, but I always knew that was possibly going to be the case, and I had to kind of come up with a plan of how I would take this game. I knew I still had a lot of threats on the board, and I knew that I had the tools to do it. And there was one tool in particular that I knew I wanted to use and try and really utilise in this game. And that was, I took on Araman, I took the Treason of Tzeentch, which basically allows you to take control of a character. It can't be the Warlord, which is really important. So when we went through lists at the beginning, I said, you know, so what have you got? I've got this, and then I've got this character. Right, so as soon as I knew, and it was his Crusader, he made a character. As soon as I knew the Crusader was a character, I was like, right, I need to get my hands on that Crusader. I need to take control of him and see if I can do some serious damage. Because with Mortarion gone, I knew that even with the Zangors, potentially I could be in trouble doing the damage I need to see these guys off. So I was like, right, okay, so this is a great opportunity for me. So we went into the psychic phase. I did a few smites, I did a few kind of key kind of buffing powers, and then I went for Treason of Tzeentch. So I measured my distance out to make sure I was in range. I moved up, but also, you know, just tried to keep as safe as I possibly could. I used the Enlightened as a buffer. I did not want him getting to the characters easily. So we used them as a bit of a buffer with their speed, and then Araman cast Treason of Tzeentch. I used the channeling, so I used the stratagem to give myself a +2 to it. And with Araman's native +1, it meant I got it off without too much trouble. And then came the big leadership. So with Treason of Tzeentch, you had to beat the leadership on just 2 dice. So it was going to be tough, but I did, and I believe I even might have rolled double 6 on that. But whatever it was, I passed that off, and I took control of the Crusader, which was awesome. So the plan then was to make sure, basically the Crusader was almost a middle knight, so one of his either Errant or Warden had come forward. I knew that was going to be the target of my smites and most of my shooting. I was going to try and take that one down as the first knight, and then I was going to use the Crusader to help me with that and potentially do some damage into the Castellan as well. So that was kind of the strategy and what I wanted to do. So I started kind of working on that. So after doing a little bit of damage with the smites, I then took control of that Crusader. I shot pretty much everything into the Warden or Errant. And I did eventually take it out. I had to pretty much put almost everything into it, but I did take him out. He wasn't close to anything to do any damage, but he was gone. So my first knight was out of the way. I positioned it so then I could charge into the Castellan. So I charged into the Castellan, but not before I had also used my dark matter crystal earlier in the turn to bring in all my Zangors into the corner behind the Castellan, and then I multi-charged. So I charged the Zangor in, I charged the Crusader in, all into his Castellan, and the opportunity now was mine to try and take this big guy down. I didn't take him down, but what I did do was I caused some awful amount of damage to him. So I took him down not into his last bracket, but into his second bracket, and well into his second bracket. So coming out of that turn, he had less than 10 wounds left, and I knew that after dispatching one knight, taking another one down to so low, and also taking his Crusader out of position, I was in a really good place. I just needed to now weather the storm this turn, and then I would definitely be in the ascendancy. So that was kind of where we were. And then after that, it did kind of go backwards and forwards, to be honest, for the next couple of turns. I did the same thing again in the next turn, so I took control again. That did manage to see off the Castellan, which was good. He was out of the way, so now he just had his Crusader and he had a War Warden. And that was his army, but he was doing damage as well. By that point, the Enlightened had gone down. He'd started doing damage to other things. He was starting to pick up quite a lot of points. He had got rid of the Zangors now. They basically, he was able to pull away from them with the Castellan in the second turn and basically dispatch the majority of those. So they went down. So he was starting to clock up the points, and I was starting to run out of a little bit of steam. I still was up, but it was very close. In the end, the game actually came down to, he had pretty much dispatched everything. I had taken out everything but one knight, so all I had left to deal with was this Crusader. Obviously he had the most weapons and he was coming at me. All I had left was 3 Helverins, and I think I had a unit of cultists left. That's all I had, but I was just about up on objectives. So last turn came and I did just nick it. So I nicked it by 1 point, which I was really happy with. Knights are a very tough matchup, even against my list, which does have a lot of teeth, but losing Mortarion so quickly, it was tough. It was really tough, and the Castellan is such a nasty unit. It was a tough game. So first game out of the blocks, a win, and probably the ideal win. I didn't score too big. I think I scored about 25 points, so I knew I wasn't going to be up in the top sort of 4 or 5, so which would put me in a nice position going into game 2. So game 2, what did happen? So game 2. Game 2, I was up against Adam Evans. Now Adam was, I was staying with him. He was staying in the same place as us. I've met Adam now before. Really top guy. We get on really well. We've got the same stupid sense of humour, which is funny, and he's a cool person to hang out. He was playing orcs, and he was playing like 160 orcs. This was prior to Codex, which was quite funny because all weekend we were just talking about the new orc Codex, but he was playing with a non-Codex army because he had dropped. The Codex was dropped after the deadline, so he played without. But he had loads of boys. He had some Storm boys. He had tons of characters. Just massive bodies. He had Gazgul in there. So yeah, he had a dangerous list potentially because he had just so much ball control. It was unreal, and he was definitely going to bring the heat. And I've recently come off the back of a game against a big orc army in another tournament when I was playing the Smash Brothers. So I was playing both Magnus and Mortarion, and I actually found that game relatively easy. I went through them really quickly. Now, to be fair, the gentleman I played did roll terribly, failed so many charges, and he did not do well. So maybe that didn't tell the whole story, but I did annihilate like 150 boys easily and tabled him. Against Adam, it was not that easy. It was actually quite tough. So this time, I did get first turn, if I can remember rightly. I'm pretty sure I got first turn, and I came at him. That was the plan. I was just gonna come at him. I wasn't gonna hold back. That was basically what we were gonna do. so that's what I did. So I basically powered up everything. We used the cultist as a bit of a screen, and we started to get in his face. We started doing damage. We used the infernal gateway to try and chain reaction some mortal wounds from Araman, which was great. I managed to kind of not pick off some characters, but do some heavy work to some characters. Mortarion charged in. We dispatched. So yeah, so Mortarion, he kind of, he got in there, he started to do his thing. We were chain reacting mortal wounds. He was doing his aura to take the toughness down. We were pinging off stuff with the Helverins. So we were doing not too bad, but he was still taking a lot of the board, and I was not clearing him as quickly as I thought at first. He was also getting rid of the Zangors. So the Zangor unit was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I decided not to spring them into action first turn, because the Zangors hitting the front line of boys might have killed a unit, but then they're all going to die then afterwards, and I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to make sure that I could kind of spread his army and then pick him off when he was weaker. That was kind of the plan anyway. So the game goes basically went toing and froing. He got most of his psychic powers off. He was jumping boys all over the place. He was causing a lot of damage. Eventually I managed to whittle him down. The Zangors in the end, they just basically camped on objective. They camped on his objective because I got the bonus point for it. So basically I teleported them onto his objective, because by that point he had left that alone. He had some grots close by, but the grots could never get to it. They were either going to get smashed by the Zangors, or they'd be leaving the objective they were on at the moment. So they were kind of staying put. They weren't going to go anywhere, and so it was a bit of a stalemate with them. But we were starting to it was getting close. There was not that many points in it. We were starting to run out of time. And that's the only thing that happens with Orcs sometimes. You know, they do start to grind that time out. And Adam's a quick player, so it's not his fault. It's just a lot of boys to move around, and it does take its time. And I wasn't playing, you know, I wasn't like hammering through the turns, because I had to make the right decisions. So the game was starting to slow down. We're running out of time, and we're thinking, uh-oh, we need to get this done. In the end, I did table him, but it was close, and it went a little bit to the wire. So it was a great game. Adam's an amazing guy to play. He's really chilled out. It's a lot of fun. It was just a really cool game. So so that was a fairly big result, but that gave me with 2 wins going into game 3. So game 3, I play my old buddy and fellow TO from the Northwest Open and the Last Chance Open, Dave Maddox. We've played once before at the Scottish Takeover. Dave's a really good player. He's kind of in and out of 40k. He was very successful in kind of 5th and 6th edition, came away from it a little bit, has got back in around 8th edition, has kind of picked it up, but he plays a lot of other systems as well. So he doesn't play loads and loads of 40k, but he's a very good player. He's very tactical. He knows his armies really well. So he was playing Tzeentch Demons, and he was playing pretty much a pure Tzeentch Demons. He had a little bit of Thousand Suns in there, you know, for that really cool smiting. Araman's such a good unit, so he was in there as well. You know, it's just like it's just a quality list. He went for quite a lot of reinforcement points, so he had about 250-300 points worth of reinforcement points. He had a great big unit of pink horrors. He had some little brimstone horrors just to kind of give him the CPs. He had some exalted flamers. He had 3 demon princes in all, when you take into account them all. So he had a good list. And he had some flamers as well. And flamers I actually rate. I think they're solid. The board that we had was a pretty terrible board for me. It had a Sky Shield landing pad in the middle, which basically nothing of my stuff could kind of get under, and all of his units could get under, which kind of stopped me from really kind of getting at him as much. That did help him out a little bit, but he hated it as well. You know, we both kind of looked at it and we're like, well, this is not going to be great, but it is what it is, and you play with the kind of board. So as quite often it is with me and Dave have played in the past, it's a very cat and mouse first turn, so we're both kind of jockeying for position. I gave him first turn. I knew he wasn't going to do anything. In fact, no, I think it was the opposite way around. I think he gave me first turn. But anyway, so what happened was we both kind of powered up. I chipped away at his small unit, so I just tried to, I thought for the first couple of turns I can just kind of hold the same amount and I can kill more, because I can kill his brimstone horrors, because there wasn't enough line of sight blocking really to kind of avoid them from getting shot off the board. So we kind of did that until he got to the middle of the board. Once he was in the middle of the board with his big kind of, you know, almost like Death Star of demons all hidden behind. He had the changeling as well, so 4 up, 6 up save, fairly resilient and able to split 1,000 times. Then I was like, right, okay, so now we need to start going for a little bit of death. Now, we both knew that a lot of this was going to come down to potential death hex. So if I can death hex him, then Mortarion will basically make a mess of that whole army, because he'll just slice through those horrors and there's nothing they can do about it. So it was kind of, he knew that, and he knew that was my big move. And I think it came down to turn 3. So turn 3, I'm up at that point, not by a lot, but I'm up. Dave's chipping away at me, but then I'm like, right, we got to go for it this time. So we went for it, we powered up, we put everything in, and we failed everything. Failed Death Hex, failed all the other power-up spells, failed a ton of smites, failed Warp Time. We literally failed everything. It was abysmal. And that was pretty much game there and then. I knew it was. It did actually get quite close, because Mortarion did get in. Dave wasn't able to kill him quickly, and he did do quite a bit of damage, as well as the Demon Princes and, you know, the shooting from the Helverins. I was starting to really remove his stuff to the end of the game, when he basically just had characters, but he had taken a significant lead that I couldn't catch him, and he did pit me by a couple of points. But it was a great game, very, very tactical. It should have been mine. I had kind of 2 options, so either I could have gone in earlier, and I maybe should have gone in 1 turn earlier, and even then if I wasn't buffed, I still probably, over the amount of turns, I could have taken him out and would have won that way. Or if the powers had gone off, which statistically they should have done, or majority of them, then again it would have been my game. So it's just one of those things, it kind of happens. Dice sometimes just desert you when you desperately need them, but it was a great game and it was really, really close. So I come out the first day with 2 wins and a draw, and a loss, but a very close loss. So I'm feeling quite good about the list. I'm feeling good about the tournament. At the end of day 1, there was only 1 player who had gone 3 out of 3 wins. No, there was 2. So it was Dave who'd played me, and then 1 other guy, Stefan. I'll remember his name in a minute because it's important. So they were the 2 unbeaten players. The second players down had got a draw. So Gav and Beth, 2 players that were doing very well as well, that were definitely in the ascendancy for this tournament, had both played each other and had drawn. So I knew with that in mind that obviously with the 2 top players, Dave and the other gentleman, playing against each other, there was likely to be an opportunity for a player that hadn't got a total win record to actually come in and take the whole thing. So with that in the back of my mind, I kind of thought, right, let's get some rest, and let's get ready for day 2. So went home, absolutely exhausted after a lot of travel and a lot of 40k, and a lot of just chatting and chilling and just having a lot of fun. And I went to bed and got a lot of sleep. So we came back day 2, and what was I going to come up against? My game 4. My game 4 was against Brett, another awesome guy. We had a really fun game, and Brett had a ridiculously crazy army. He had Mortarion, he had the Lord of Skulls, and he had a Brass Scorpion. He then also had a couple of sorcerers and some cultists. That was his whole army, and I was like, wow, that is such a cool army. Very, very powerful, very nasty, actually has quite a lot of shooting as well, and I kind of knew that this was going to be a tough game and I needed a few things to go my way. And thankfully they did. Brett got very unlucky on this game, but also I managed to get the right kind of bits to come in place for me. So I managed to get the jump on his Scorpion. So I kind of played quite defensively. I knew he was going to come at me. He didn't really have anything to shoot at particularly. He was able to put some damage into Mortarion, but not enough. Took him down to 10 wounds in the first turn. But then I jumped him out. I completely debuffed the Brass Scorpion, and then shot him, charged him, killed him. He didn't blow up, and that was a great start for me because I knew that's one of his big danger units out of the way, and the Scorpion was the one that scared me most. Obviously I knew what Mortarion was going to bring, but that was always going to be a tough one, and I know Mortarion well enough to believe that I can deal with him even if I lose my Mortarion. So that's kind of the plan, and the Lord of Skulls is, he's very overpointed, and as much as he's good, I kind of thought, well, he's the third of the three. I need to deal with the Scorpion first, and I need to deal with Mortarion, and then the Brass Skull, and then the Skull Taker, Lord of Skulls. So that was kind of the plan. So after dispatching his Brass Scorpion, his Mortarion did attack my Mortarion, and thankfully he wasn't able to get Death Hex off against me from his Sorcerer, which was handy, but he did manage to buff his Mortarion really heavily. He also didn't manage to get his -1 to hit off, which was key, but he did get off the Diabolical Strength, and he did get off Blades of Putrefaction, so he was going to be doing a lot of damage to me, and I didn't expect Mortarion to survive, but he did. He did survive incredibly and hit him back, taking him down to 7 wounds, which was really important because I thought, you know, even if I die now, at least I've done a huge bit of heavy lifting of Mortarion, and I will be able to come away from this. So my turn came around, again just kind of chipping away, done a little bit of work to the Brass Scorpion, wasn't able to put too much damage into Mortarion, and he saved quite a lot of his Disgusting Resilience. But came into the assault phase, I decided not to go for the mass attacks because I hadn't buffed my Mortarion in that way. I just wasn't able to get those powers off, or some other powers were more important, whatever it might be. I didn't have Diabolical Strength, and I didn't have Blades of Putrefaction. So I decided to go for Eviscerating Strike, which is always a risk because if you don't roll high on your d6s and he makes a few 4-up invons, then they can be blunted pretty much. And that's what happened. He managed to get away with not taking too much damage from my Mortarion, and then when he hit back, he did kill mine. So he had won the multi off, and it was time for then him to try and put some pressure on, which is what he did. He charged in, and he charged in against Araman, so his Mortarion then went after my Warlord, which is a smart move. What wasn't such a smart move was after his swipe attack in the previous turn, when he wasn't able to kill my Mortarion, he was a bit disheartened by the sweep attack, so he went for Eviscerating Blow on Araman, which was an interesting choice, and I understood his logic behind it because he really only needed 1 through. With a command point, he should probably take out Araman. Araman saved all his saves, so he saved all his saves like a boss, even with Disgusting Resilience on Mortarion, and he saved them all, and that was game, because that then meant he was right where I needed him to be. Araman then turned round, hit him, and hit him hard, taking him down to 1 wound. So in the next turn, it took a little bit of smites, but I was able to dispatch Mortarion, not before I jumped everything out of range, so he exploded. I didn't want him doing damage to me, so I dispatched him, and that pretty much left me with just the Lord of Skulls to deal with, who had already taken a bit of damage. So the Lord of Skulls then chased me around a bit. He killed quite a lot, but I was able to eventually take him out, and with that, that gave me the win. So that took me into my final game with 3 wins and 1 loss, but 1 big scoring loss. So I had the opportunity to potentially take the whole thing. Results would need to go my way, and I was probably much more playing for a podium position, but I drew Gavin. Gavin Heritage. Now, Gavin's a really good player. He's a good ETC player. He's played internationally. He knows what he's doing. He's won tournaments. He's a very, very good player, and yeah, he had a list that was brutal. So his list consisted of 2 Tiger Sharks. Now this is after the nerf, so you take the ion cannons rather than heavy burst cannons, but they're really decent. Then all the missiles, all the other guns. Yeah, he had a lot of shooting on those things, so he had 2 of those. They're also toughness 8, and they are -1 to hit, so they're pretty good. He then had 3 Riptides, and that was more or less it, because that's so many points. He then had just some small units of Fire Warriors. He had a couple of marksmen, and just a sprinkling of characters, one of them being his commander. So this was always going to be a tough game. We discussed this quite a lot in the build up to the tournament. We had an idea that we'd probably be playing each other at some point. I think his list is better to deal with mine than mine is to deal with him, and a lot of it was going to come down to turn 1. So I got turn 1. Well, I had the +1, which was helpful, but I did get the first turn, and he didn't seize. And we had Dawn of War deployment, which was perfect for me because it meant that with some good rolls, I could get Mortarion straight into the thick of things, and that was the plan. That's what I needed to do, because I knew that Mortarion was just going to be minced by all his shooting, so he had to go headlong into the fire and see how much damage he could do. And boy, he did a fair bit of damage. So he charged in. He did some mortal wounds with his smites. He did some, his aura did damage as well. My Helverins managed to pick off some stuff. He actually positioned his marksman pretty poorly. One of his marksmen just got annihilated straight away. But I made a bit of a mistake, I think. Like, we talked about it a little bit after the game, and I think I made a tactical error in this one. So I very much wanted to make sure that I took out one of the flyers. I wanted to put a lot of shooting into the flyers, and then I wanted to assault him head on. The problem with that is he had Screams as Riptides, so I couldn't get into his Riptides with Mortarion, because you can't jump over him, and he hadn't left enough room even if you could jump over, to be fair. So I couldn't get into his Riptides. That was a problem, and what I should have done was easily dispatch the Fire Warriors in front of the Riptides to make sure that Mortarion, even though he had a bit of a longer charge then, but to get Mortarion in. And I think that was a little bit on my mind. I kind of knew that I was extended quite a long way, and if Mortarion didn't get the charge off, he could be sitting out just in the wind ready to get annihilated. At least if he could go into the Fire Warriors, he could really get close to the Riptides, make them all disperse and start to pass some pressure on. So I think that was in the back of my mind, and also I wanted to take out one of the Tiger Sharks. So that's what I set about doing. So the Mortarion went headlong to try and deal with the Riptides, and everything else went after one of the Tiger Sharks. Now I almost killed one of the Tiger Sharks. I took it into its, not its last profile, but second to last profile, and again low down on it. So I was quite happy with that, and I dispatched pretty much everything bar his commander and his Riptides at the back. Mortarion just made a mess of them. The Zangors I jumped in as well because I wanted everything to go into his front lines, everything to hit him head on, and I had a really good turn. I caused tons of damage and I was right in his face, but I hadn't managed to dispatch any of his big hitters, and that was a problem. I think if I'd managed to take out the Tiger Shark, I would have won the game, because he wouldn't have had enough firepower to take out Mortarion, and then Mortarion would have completely soloed him. That's what I think would have happened. Unfortunately, his Tiger Shark was able to limp out of it, which was a problem, and that I think ended up costing me quite heavily. But we went into Gavin's turn, and Gavin didn't roll particularly well. He'd obviously lost a lot of his kind of ability to buff his units. He did just about manage to kill Mortarion, kind of almost on his last shot that he could do into him, killed him off. And that put him in a strong position because he was then starting to dispatch other stuff. Came back to my turn. I killed the Tiger Shark, put a lot of damage into the other one. And then I have my Zangors. My Zangors had already taken some damage, but now they needed to charge in. And unfortunately, they just got mowed down in that horrible tower overwatch, which is just one of those things. At that point, there was nothing really they could do. They were just sitting there. They'd already been dark matter crystalled. There was nowhere for them to hide. There was nowhere that they could kind of hide behind a rock and make a charge. It just wasn't going to happen. So they end up just getting evaporated in Overwatch. And then Gavin dispatched some more little stuff, so he came forward. Still very much at that point, it's my game. And then catastrophically, in the next turn, I did kill his Tiger Shark, which blew up and actually rinsed the heart of my army. So it ended up killing Araman. It took some damage to the Demon Prince. It did some work on the Enlightened as well. Yeah, it caused me some serious trouble, and that basically just took my chance away. Where I was in the Ascendants, it just ripped apart, which just took away all my psychic abilities in that one stage, and that was kind of it. So the end of the game very much kind of, even though at that point it was really close, it just came down to, could the Helverins outperform the Riptides? And they just couldn't. The 2-up save on the Riptides just meant that even though the Helverins are able to do so much work, their shots were just pinging off the Riptides, and the Riptides were doing so much more work to the Helverins. And Gavin, by that point, had managed to start to move towards into the middle of the board. He started to get some momentum. I had nothing else really could do any damage at all. I couldn't just stand back and ping him because I needed to get some of my secondary points, so I needed to move around. And that's kind of how it ended. In the end, Gavin did manage to get a healthy score, and took me by some extent, because I run out of steam. The army was just out of puff. It had done everything it could early doors, and then just due to some bad luck really on my behalf and poor decision making potentially in the first turn, I did lose. So end of the tournament, my final result was 3 wins and 2 losses. Both of the losses I'm happy with. I kind of feel there might have been something I could have done better in the game versus Gavin, but basically I played pretty well for the majority of that game, and I think I played it right on the whole. And my other loss against Dave, again, just a lot of that was down to cold dice. There were chances there always are. There are probably things I could have done better, but on the whole, pretty happy with my 2 losses. I really liked the list. It performed really well. And so overall, I think it put me on 7th. So, yeah, in all, came 2nd. Generally pretty happy with that. I was very close to 6th and 5th. I couldn't quite get the 4th, but you know, I needed a win off that last game. It was just one of those things. Gavin did end up finishing 2nd, and Dave ended up finishing 4th, so I'm quite happy with that. The tournament was won by Stefan. Really want to say well done to him. He was taking Grey Knights to a real proper full-on tournament. So no single faction, no restrictions, and he took Grey Knights. Now, caveat to that, he did take some Custodes in there, but his army was heavily pointed in Grey Knights. He very much was flying the Grey Knight flag, and he was the only player at the tournament that had a winning record, a full winning record. So he went 5 games out of 5, beat everybody that was put in front of him. And congratulations to you, my friend. Really chuffed for you. It's a great result. And he had 3 Nemesis Dread Knight Masters, some strike teams, a few little kind of scattering of characters. Then he had I think he had 3 Custode, Jetbike, Praetor, Shield Captain guys, and then he had some. I think he had a Guard Battalion, just the trusty, loyal 32 most probably, just to get the most points. Don't know exactly what this was, but that was roughly what it was. And if you watch my video around the list before the event, I pretty much just skimmed past it, because Dread Knights are not that great. They ain't that great. They're overcosted for what they do. They're not that frightening. They don't do that much damage. So, you know, literally, he was, as much as he was playing with good units, he wasn't playing with the best units. His predominant faction is a faction that isn't that great in the game, and he still managed to bring it home for the win and beat some, on paper, a lot nastier lists. So really well done, Stefan. Congratulations. Also congratulations to Gavin, who came second, and to Beth, who came third with another Tau list, and Dave, as I said, in fourth. So really well done. As a kind of slight caveat, I did win the best painted monster for my Demon Prince. Hopefully, if I've got a kind of picture somewhere, I'll put it up on the screen. But really happy with that. That's kind of it's becoming a little bit of a habit now to win painting prizes, which is very touching. I've never considered myself as a painter as such, but it's really spurring me on to kind of get better and better at that. But overall, incredible tournament. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The Scottish Takeover 5 is in March. You can jump over and you can check out that event. The page, I believe, has already launched. I would heavily recommend it. It's a great event, really well TO'd, really well organised, very welcoming. It gets a big thumbs up for me, and I'm very much hoping to be going back there in March. So guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and you've kind of got an idea of kind of how it went, and without kind of further ado, I look very much forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.